If the thought of the holidays has you all stressed out, then this show's for you. In today's show, we're going to look at ways to make the season more enjoyable. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Now I know the holidays are fast approaching, but I want you to slow down, stop, and relax for 30 minutes and let me do all the work. You see, I've got some great tips for you that will help you save time, and I want to show you some of the beauty of the season. So to kick off this show, we're going to visit a Christmas tree farm where we'll learn more about these symbols of the season. Gift wrapping is a source of frustration for some, so I've got some ideas on creating all-natural gift wrap that will give ordinary brown paper some pizzazz. And take a look at these unique tabletop trees. They're sure to bring a festive touch to your home and garden, and while they look complicated, they're actually incredibly easy. Plus, we'll unravel the mystery of mistletoe and enjoy a great cup of cocoa. But first, who's up for a trip? We're off to Sugar Plum Farms right after this quick break. The familiar words of the traditional song Old Tenenbaum ring true for James Pitts. He's known to some as Santa because every year his tree farm is alive with the bustling activities of Christmas. We popped in to visit James at Sugar Plum Farm in Plumtree, North Carolina.
Yeah, we love growing Christmas trees where it's good to the environment. Every time we cut a tree, we put out a new one. We've been in production for about 31 years. We're on our 4th rotation in Christmas trees. We grow the North Carolina Fraser fir, which is number 2 in production in the nation. Once we collect our cones in the summertime, we take them in and dry them and then process them, put them in the freezer and plant them the next spring. We usually let them stay in a seed bed for 3 years, and then we take them out of the seed bed, grade them out, and put them in a transplant bed. Then we pick the best ones out of that transplant bed and take them to the field. That tree's already 5 years old and it usually stays in the field 6 to 7 years. So a tree is usually 12 years old before it's ever cut. Fall is the busiest time of year. We start cutting our trees around November the 10th to the 15th, depending on the weather. We have several people that plans to come up every year and cut their own tree. They've been doing it for about 7 or 8 years now. They've come as far as Atlanta, Greenville, South Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Knoxville, Tennessee. Once you cut your tree, you need to take it home, make a fresh cut out of it, and put it in water immediately. Most trees will drink a quart of water a day. We compete with the fake tree all the time, and they have about 38% of the market on the last figures I've seen, and we have about 38% of the market. But the people that really uses the fake tree, they love the green and the smell, the aroma of a Fraser fir. And I think that eventually we will win them over.
With all of this attention to trees, you have to wonder how such a popular tradition got started. Well, we have our European immigrants to thank. You see, the idea for the Christmas tree is rooted in the Middle Ages with what was called the paradise tree. Apples symbolizing the Garden of Eden were hung on a fir tree, an evergreen symbolizing eternal life. The apples themselves harken back to Adam and Eve and the tree of knowledge. But the Germans were the ones who really got into the idea of bringing a tree indoors to adorn. They are largely responsible for the custom as we know it today. Now, once you've made your selection and you've chosen the perfect tree, it's time to shift your attention to decorating. You've no doubt seen the beautifully decorated Christmas trees in storefronts and in florists, and you may think, I don't know that I can achieve that. Well, actually, there's some tips that the professionals use in decorating Christmas trees that we can apply at home. Let me show you a few of them. To help keep a tree fresh through the holidays, I always recut the trunk and cut into the end of it with a hatchet to help it draw up more moisture before I put it into its stand. Decorating begins with the lights. If you're using some from last year, make sure there are no broken bulbs or frayed wires. A word of warning here, many professionals when decorating a Christmas tree use a lot of lights, but the technique is pretty simple. You see, they start at the top and work their way to the bottom. They also wrap each individual limb, starting at the trunk, wrapping it around the spine of the limb out to the tip. Now, when you start wrapping, make sure that you follow the same pattern all the way around the tree. This makes the distribution of the lights more uniform and easier to take off after the holidays. I always string the lights with them on, and I find it easier to work with shorter strings, say 35 to 50, and I never connect more than 6 strings together. I wasn't kidding when I said it takes a lot of lights. I've already used over 300 and I'm not even halfway finished. But if you use this technique, you won't be disappointed with the results. Now, if that tree lighting project's a little more than you want to take on, how about a way to add festive color to your front door? Stay with us. The holidays are a busy time for all of us, and you may not have much time for decorating. But if you're looking for something that's new, an alternative, say, to the traditional Christmas wreath for your front door, you might try a swag of greenery. Now, this doesn't take much time to do. In fact, you can use things right out of the garden and a few things around the house, like a coat hanger and chicken wire. It doesn't take much time to do it. You can use a variety of materials, and the results can be beautiful. I just put this one together. Let me show you how I did it. First, I took a heavy-duty coat hanger and pulled it into a diamond shape and covered it with 1-inch mesh chicken wire. Then I took the ends of the chicken wire and wrapped them around the frame of the coat hanger. I cut enough evergreen to make 6 bundles, and I secured each one of them with a pipe cleaner. Then I covered the wire frame with them, starting at the bottom and working my way to the top. I used branches from this Leyland cypress, but any evergreen will do. You might try boxwood, holly, or even eucalyptus. I accented the frame with 2 bundles of red berries and added some apples. To attach the apples, I pierced them through the core and ran a pipe cleaner through them and then tied them to the frame. And then to finish it off, I used a festive plaid bow. When it comes to what you attach to the greenery, use your imagination. With this frame, you can use anything you want. Now, one way to keep warm and add some holiday cheer to your home is to create a Yule log. And it's an easy way to keep your kids busy. I mean, after all, think about it. You're not going to have many chances when you can hand your kid a log and say, go out and have some fun. Yule logs were started back in Europe, and the idea behind it was to burn a log at Christmas for good luck. The longer the log burned, the better your luck would be in the new year. Sounds like a pretty good deal, doesn't it? It's a lot of fun to decorate a Yule log with things from the garden that are also rich in symbolism, like holly. You see, the spiny points on the leaves of holly were thought to represent Christ's crown of thorns, and the berries, drops of blood. And like much of the other greenery we use, the holly is also evergreen, symbolic of everlasting life. Now, mistletoe, another evergreen, can also be used, and we tend to associate it with kissing. But the Romans believed it to be a symbol of peace. And my Yule log isn't complete without the evergreen herb rosemary. It's named for the Virgin Mary, and she's thought to be responsible for changing its flowers from white to blue. Maybe this year you'll start your own family tradition of burning a Yule log and invite your holiday guests to bring items from the garden to use in decorating it. Now, another way to add color to your home during the holidays is with what else? Poinsettias. Poinsettias are in stores and florists everywhere. It just seems like they show up all of a sudden. But have you ever wondered how? Well, it all starts back in the summer, when little cuttings are taken from the stock plants. The cuttings are taken anywhere along the stem and then placed into a rooting medium. Here they're sprayed with a fine mist of water every 30 minutes or so until the roots develop. Now, this only takes about 3 weeks. Next, they're planted in pots where they can grow to full size. Now, once they fill out, growers begin to cut back on the light. This is done because the reduced light causes the color of the leaves to change from green to red. Notice I said leaves. What we think of as the petals of the flower are actually leaves. The flower is this little yellow guy here in the center. But of course, it's these fiery red leaves that catch our attention. Now, they don't stop with just traditional red these days. Take a look at some of the new varieties that have been developed since the 1960s. These days, they come in all shades of white to pink. Some are blotched and speckled. while others look like they've been frosted with color. The great thing about all of this is that it would seem that now we have a poinsettia to match every color theme and decor. But no matter your preference, I think you'd have to agree that there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to bring these festive flowers to us to enjoy during the holidays. Well, as you can see, I've made a big mess here, but I've had a good time doing it. You know, when the holidays roll around, I'm always looking for ways to bring the garden inside and integrate it into some of the activities that I do. Of course, we're always having to wrap packages this time of year. Years ago, I decided I want to take a simple approach. So now what I do is I just take ordinary brown paper like this, wrap the packages, and then get creative with things from the garden. You know, it's amazing what you can find in your own backyard. Things like juniper, holly, even rosemary. There are lots of ways to tie these natural elements onto a package. I like to use recycled ribbon from the year before, or even raffia. It's a perfect natural material. And don't forget about dried things, such as coxcomb, even Japanese lanterns, globe amaranth, and sheet moss. And don't forget about some of these tiny pine cones. You see, all of these natural elements add a touch of charm, a special unique quality to all of your holiday gift wrapping. Now take a look at this. It's a symbol of the holidays. I bet you know what it is. Of course, it's mistletoe. And we'll unravel the mystery of this plant in our next viewer question, plus find out how to create these classic tabletop trees. It's all coming up next, so stay with us. Welcome back. I'm Alan Smith. In today's show, we're taking a look at ways to bring the beauty of the garden into our lives during the holiday season. Earlier, we visited Sugar Plum Farm, where we saw how Christmas trees get into shape for the season. Then I gave you some tips on lighting a tree like a pro. We looked at a simple door swag that can give your home a welcome touch. And I hope you'll take to heart this idea of creating your own holiday traditions. Oh, and we can't forget incorporating natural elements into your gift wrapping. Now, a lot of the ideas you've seen in today's show may look expensive and elaborate, but they're really not. They're quite simple and easy. Now, take for instance these little trees. Another simple idea. Basically, you're just using some small terracotta pots, which I've painted various shades of brown, and I've planted in them some small conifers. Now, these happen to be dwarf Alberta spruce, and they're great for using inside and out. Last year, I used these in a big grouping on a table in the middle of my garden. You might even consider bringing them inside. They look great on a coffee table or even a dining table. Now, here's a tip you may want to keep in mind when you dress these little guys up. I like to take some of this sheet moss and just layer it right across the top of each container like this. It's just a nice way to finish it off. Now, what's great about these little conifers is that you can find them in a variety of places. Your favorite nursery, discount stores, even online. And once you've finished with them, you can plant them in the garden. Okay, now it's time for viewer mail, and we have some questions that are related to the season. This one comes from Patsy in Georgia, and she asks, Alan, I absolutely love mistletoe. I love using it in my decorating, but I feel a little guilty because someone once told me that it's bad for plants. Is this true? Well, actually, Patsy, mistletoe is a parasite, and it can harm trees. When we call mistletoe parasitic, we simply mean that it has to have a host plant, like trees on which to live. Part of the reason it became popular in the winter is because it's an evergreen, and it can be seen where trees lose their leaves. While it looks harmless enough, a bad infestation of mistletoe can actually kill a tree, especially in times of drought, when the tree needs all of the nutrients for itself. Now, the way mistletoe spreads is by dropping its white berries onto other tree limbs. And as you can imagine, the birds tend to help with this a lot too. To rid the host plant of mistletoe, all you need to do is cut out the infected limbs. And once you've done that, I see nothing wrong with using this mistletoe in your holiday decorating. Now, those are some mistletoe facts. How about a little lore? Now, there are a lot of legends out there about how the kissing tradition came about. Some are steeped in the ancient Druid fertility rituals. But the interesting thing I've found is that in almost every culture, mistletoe symbolizes love, life, and peace. Now, if you think mistletoe's romantic, you're going to love the next segment. It's all about chocolate. Did you know that chocolate has been consumed in some form since at least 460 AD? But it wasn't until the 19th century when cocoa as we know it was introduced. And while the U.S. consumes its share of chocolate, it's the Northern European countries who gobble up this sweet treat with gusto. So when it comes to chocolate during the winter months, I have to say my mind naturally turns to hot cocoa. But what really makes a great cup of hot chocolate? Let's step into River City Coffee to find out.
Chocolate was originally consumed by the Aztecs as a bitter drink. They would take roasted cocoa beans, which they had roasted in copper pans over a fire, and crush them with hot peppers, hot chilies such as jalapenos. They would take that and mix it with water and use a muddler to crush the beans in the drink and to also act as a swizzle stick to froth the beverage. The froth was considered the best part of the drink. The best way to make a cup of cocoa is to take a mixture of milk and heavy whipping cream. I'll bring it just to a boil. Once it gets there, I'll add my cocoa. Also, you need to decide whether or not you're going to be using peppers. Usually when I'm making hot chocolate at home, I will add chipotle and ancho or pasilla chili peppers to the cocoa. I'll also add a splash of cinnamon, which also spices it up quite a bit. The peppers accentuate the flavor of the cocoa. You can make any cheap hot chocolate taste very decent. Some advice for people when going out to try and find a good cup of cocoa is look for one that's not finely ground. Look for one that still has flakes or particles of solid chocolate in it, because when it's overground, it's overprocessed, and that can destroy a lot of the flavors.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's show as much as I have. You know, during holiday time, things do get sort of out of hand. There's a lot of hustle and bustle going on, but I hope you'll take the time to enjoy some of the treats of the season, like a cup of hot cocoa or a Christmas tree, whether it's large or small. Until next time, from the garden, I'm Alan Smith.
In this garden I dream of a bed of flowers. Bluebirds sing of the beauty all around us. And every time the sun comes out, I can't help but smile. Oh, no, I can't help but smile.